So this is the fourth album by the band Tragodia. It's a band I've recently just stumbled upon, so I've been listening to this fourth album for a while now, which came out just a few days ago. I have touched on the previous album just to see how different the sound is from album to album, to just see, you know, how they've kind of improved upon the prior album, what they've changed, if anything. So that's pretty much as far as I've really got with the band. For those of you who don't know, as I said, this is the fourth album by this band. The band formed in 1996, so they've been around for a fair while, and they're from Italy. So I'm an Italian metal band. Now, looking on their own Facebook site on as far as what they say their genre is, as well as other people, they label themselves as epic metal. I don't know what epic really kind of means. It just seems heavy metal. So heavy metal / epic, whatever that means. And for this album, Before the Fall, that we're going to be reviewing today, this has got another label to it. It is now epic heavy metal / gothic. So it's got a bit of a gothic kind of vibe to it. It's not like Marilyn Manson or Wednesday 13. It's not goth. It's just got a kind of dark, kind of brooding kind of undertow that kind of flows through the album. It's kind of there slightly, just a very open, dark, kind of gothic feel. But it's easily seen, but it's definitely not the forefront of what it is. It's at its core just, you know, the heavy metal epic, if you will, heavy metal album, just with a gothic kind of undertow to give this album a different personality to the prior album. If you want to know what the prior album kind of sounded like, it was obviously not gothic, so the sound wasn't as open. It was a lot more constricted and a lot tighter in sound, not open and dark. It was just quite kind of heavy and tight music. So the previous album is different. So that is pretty much the description of the band. So we got, I believe, 13 tracks, I think, to get through. So let's get into the first track. Yes, the many names that won't tell you. The older I become, the deeper mystery. The Untrodden Road is a pretty long song, 5 minutes 46 seconds. And it does actually have an intro that's not the band, so there is an effect that builds up and then the band starts. So I do kind of like this over other bands, because some bands, the first track, it just immediately goes into it, there's no introduction. And then with other bands, they have the actual standalone intro track that takes around 3 minutes of just nothing. And it doesn't really build you up much. It's kind of just like really annoying and you just skip it. But the intro for this, it's just kind of effects, kind of like strings, just doing some very long holds and everything. Just volume increasing as it goes. And it only lasts 24 seconds and then the band comes in. So that gets you built up, ready, and then thrown into the band intro. In fact, the band just starting off, here we are, just shredding away, that's it. So of all kind of intros, that is pretty much the perfect way to introduce an album, so that is good. As the band comes in, the drums are doing their own kind of fast-paced thing. The guitars are doing heavy dual chugging. It's quite a thick sound, and then you have, after the chugging, they do some quickish kind of leads. And then it goes into more of a hold, bright sound, and then it comes back to that chugging with the bit of speed. And then before the singer comes in, the kind of secondary guitar kind of goes, because that really quick, fast rhythm that is being played is a lot louder and sharper. It sounds a lot better, and just the rhythm of that speed, it sounds really nice, and it does sound quite difficult and technical. It's not brutal shred, it's just something that sounds quite fast, kind of tricky, but still kind of got a melody to it. So that is quite nice, and it goes into the verse. As the singer introduces himself for the first time, you're going to hear that he doesn't have a deep voice. He has a higher registered kind of voice. It's not the highest of highs, and it's not kind of at the middle ground. It's slightly above in the middle, so slightly high, but not overly high. So that's the voice you get. He's singing along with that speed beneath him. And then that goes on for a while, then it does kind of change, which is what you would expect to be probably the pre-chorus. And that is the sound kind of contracting itself to just heavy chugs and everything, with the singer shortening his words and everything. And after that, it is the actual pre-chorus. So we've had 3 changes so far, and the pre-chorus, the band pretty much disappears. It just goes into a melody of just held really faint strings and maybe a bit of a different effect put in there, just a digital one. And then the voice just kind of soothingly kind of just sings pretty much by itself, just over the top of them, very kind of subtle things that are actually there in the background. So it's just it goes very melodic, everything just really stops and slows down. And then before the chorus hits, you get some kind of guitar picks, and then you get into the chorus where the whole band returns. The chorus is a lot more open. There is a lead kind of going on. It's open and it's kind of dark, therefore it is open and it does sound very pleasing. It's a very good strong chorus with a nice kind of lead over the top. But because it's quite dark and everything, it's not musical. It's not something that's extremely catchy. It's just a nice open pleasing chorus, which the rest of the song so far has sounded kind of technical, but there's nothing that's been very kind of fun and memorable. It's just a very good strong song with a lot of talent, but it's not something like Blink-182, you know, which is very basic, but it's so much fun and just so easy to remember. So after the chorus, you do get a bit of a different interlude from the band that leads you back into that verse. And there's subtle instances in the second verse where the singer does a bit more of a kind of gnarly kind of attack with his voice. You lead back into the chorus. There's a part of the chorus where the guitar goes a bit to a high register, so he's just a bit louder. And after that chorus, leading up to your solo, the singer does another kind of vocal change, which is yelling. It's very kind of gnarly, kind of yell, but it's not screaming. And then once he's done with that, you get kind of the solo. It's hard to kind of say if this is where the solo starts, or if this is a kind of guitar interlude building himself up for his own solo. I'm not too sure if you could consider this the solo, but it's fast playing, but it's a very repetitive pattern. And then eventually it does kind of change it up, and then it kind of gets to a bit more of an open kind of speed pattern. And then the volume increases, and this is where you may think the solo actually does start, because it gets, obviously, it starts doing more than just kind of the simple pattern for a fair while. So the volume increases, and it's a nice tone he's got going. It starts with the halls and then goes into the bit of the shred, then it kind of slows down into a lot more halls and everything. So it does kind of seem short if you consider that as the solo. It's quite short, but if you consider the whole thing, obviously there's a kind of really good build-up and everything, and then when it starts, it has the halls, then it has the speeds, then it goes kind of slower and kind of back to speed. So you just kind of dance around with it, but it would be nice if you kind of just had that louder part, which makes it sound better, and just kind of extended it even more. This is kind of what I think. As the solo finishes, it goes back to that kind of very melodic aspect, and then you get back into the chorus, leading to the end of the song. Master of the Lost is a shorter track, it's just 4 minutes 19 seconds. It has a tiny build-up, just basically an effect that lasts just a few seconds, and then it just leads into the band. It's a slower pace compared to the Untrodden Road. You still have your rhythm guitarist and your lead on top, which is pretty much consistent through the whole song, the rhythm being different to the lead, which is good because there's some leads, there's no point until it gets to a solo because they don't do anything else. Yeah, the intro kind of is going at a slowest pace, but you do kind of have a lead, and the lead does kind of sound nice, but it's just some kind of slow slides and holds and things, and that's pretty much it. As we get into the verse, there's effects on the voice as well as the music in general. It kind of just pulls everything back and everything, and just gives everything a weird kind of tone. And then it gets into that pre-chorus where it's just heavy chugs again with very kind of open voice, the effects being took off, and then you get into the chorus, which opens the sound up again, and then the voice opens up even further. That lead is present here, and it sounds a lot better with the vocals and everything than when it was in the intro. I could probably do with the lead being a bit sharper, a bit brighter and louder, mostly just because I really like the sound of the lead. I just think it sounds really nice along with the overall chorus. So I'd like it just to, have a stronger punch. It's basically just me personally. You can hear it and everything, I just want it to be really powerful. After the chorus is done, we get a completely new thing, which is kind of repetitive, but it does sound nice. It's basically just the words keep repeating itself one more time, I think the guy's saying. He just keeps saying, one more time, one more time. He just kind of keeps going over and over and over again with that same line. But the music in the background is completely changed. There's a bit of an effect on his voice, not like how the song in the first verse, that kind of effect. It's a completely different effect to his voice. And then it goes into where the first part of the verse that we had, but none of the effects are on. So it's basically just the band and the singer, how they were playing that first verse, but with no effects to it. So even though it is the same, it is pretty damn different. Then you get the pre-chorus, which I believe is pretty much unaffected, leading to the chorus, and then after the chorus it gets a bit kind of brooding with the voice and everything, and then as it kind of goes on, the singer starts opening up, leading into the solo. Again, there's a bit of an introduction to the solo, so there is a bit of a lead, but then the volume again kind of turns up, and it's like, oh, I guess this is where the lead is supposedly supposed to start. It's kind of weird. But the pre-solo to the solo, that's what you want to call it, again, it's just kind of doing holds and everything, and then when the volume turns up, it's got a lot more holds to it than the first time, but it kind of just starts with the holds, then goes to the shred, and then goes to the holds, and then kind of ends on shred again, which is kind of typical of many, many bands, and it's a bit too short. I would like it a bit longer and a bit more imaginative. It's skill, it's talent, it sounds tricky, but it's a style that's kind of done a lot with it being basically, I'll come in with holds, then go into my shred, then go back to a hold, then end on shred. It's a pattern that's done to death, so but anyway, leading back into the chorus has a bit of a change to it, and that is basically the lead singer kind of does the backing vocals, so the same chorus is playing, but now and then you'll get the lead singer in the background, even while he is also singing in the foreground, doing the actual chorus. He'll be in the background, they're singing something else, just giving the chorus a bit more to it, a bit more weight, which I do kind of like, because it's obviously ending on something a lot bigger instead of just getting the exact same chorus and then just an outro. It basically is just making the chorus go to a whole new level and everything. Just like bringing in more vocals, backing vocals, bringing more instruments. There were kind of new, very intense lead over the chorus just to finish the song on a really big high and just make it a lot bigger than what it was. So it is kind of nice. It's not huge in scale. I've heard choruses at the end of songs be a lot bigger than this, but it is nice. So into the next track.
Can you see through the veins of greed and full of loss? Can you see when the night is closing?
Veils of Grey starts with thunderous drums, so just dun 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 dun. Actually, it kind of sounds a bit like the Terminator, if anything. You know, when the Terminator kind of comes on screen, it's just a dun 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 dun. It's kind of basically the style this drum beat is kind of going with. And then other than that, you get the sound of horns as well. I'm pretty sure it's horns. And that's pretty much the entire intro until it gets to the verse. And then the guitars come in. A very beefy sound instead of a bright sound. And the lead's pretty much going with the rhythm. There is no kind of lead kind of sticking out by himself. So that kind of just kind of goes along, leading into the chorus. And the chorus, again, it opens itself up. It's a bit dark and everything. The kind of unique thing about this is I hear a piano in the background. It's very faint in there. You kind of just can hear it kind of whispering here and there, just floating about in that chorus. So if you kind of listen out for it, you can kind of hear it. It is quite subtle. After the chorus, we get a fantastic change, which is to complete melody. So you get the clean guitars and everything, along with melodic singing. And then that leads into a clean melodic solo. It's just pure melody. It sounds really, really nice. The tone is great. And then it leads back into that verse, which was quite kind of beefy, heavy, and everything. But I believe there is a change, because I think the first verse didn't have the piano, but the second verse, I think, has the piano. It is pretty actually present. You can hear it quite well in there. The chorus also has the piano still kind of in there. And after that chorus, we get another solo. It's not on the kind of clean kind of channel. It's a lot faster, but it still kind of sounds musical, even though the majority of it is actually quite quick. It just kind of sounds melodic. It's kind of weird how it's kind of done like that. But nearer to the end of the solo, he does start doing the kind of holds and everything, leading back into the chorus. So we get a fair few kind of changes and everything and different kind of styles, but it's in a very compressed song. So as we're going, we're still getting shorter times, because this song is 3 minutes 20 seconds. So as we go, the tracks are getting shorter and shorter. But that's pretty much it for this track. So let's get into the next one. So the fifth season is 4 minutes 34 seconds, so a bit longer than the previous track. And it pretty much immediately comes straight off of the previous track. So the track ends and this one just immediately kind of begins, so they both kind of connect together. And it just starts immediately. It is the heaviest track. It is really heavy. The drums are going at a very beefy, fast pace. The guitars are quite thick in sound and aggressive, and they're going a bit quick. So in for a very aggressive, very heavy song, probably the heaviest on the album. And then the verse comes in, and then everything goes away, and it's electronic. And it's pretty much just the singer with electronic, you know, dance club type of music. And it is a little weird, but I kind of like it for that reason. Instead of it just being, okay, here's the heavy start, and then the heavy verse, and then the heavy chorus, and then the heavy verse, and the heavy chorus, and then a really fast solo, the typical heavy, it's all over the place. It starts making you think this is going to be a very heavy metal thing, and then it just disappears, and then it's not even metal, but it's dance club kind of stuff that they're doing, with an effect on the vocals and everything. And then there's no band, it's just kind of electronic sounds with the voice, with electronic sounds on his voice. So it doesn't even sound metal anymore. But it doesn't last for the whole verse. Eventually, the entire band do come in, and then the effect goes off of the voice, and the instruments are very beefy and fat sounding, just chugs, just dun 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 kind of stuff. But the electronic still kind of persists through underneath and with the rest of them. So it still carries on and everything, just giving a whole new kind of flavour, a whole new taste. And that's why it's so good, because it's just so different, it's so new, and it just it doing multiple genres now, and it just brings them all together. And then it separates, and then it's got nothing like what genre it actually is, but then it goes back to that genre again, then it mixes and fuses them together again. And that's what I like, just the musical creativity of it all. The chorus, the electronic side disappears, but it's a very dark, brooding kind of chorus. It has a lead going through it and everything. It reminds me of Trivium style choruses. It does kind of sound Trivium-esque to a degree. When they go back to the verse, you don't get that intro verse that we had originally with just the effects and everything. It's basically just where it went after that. So the band, the voice without the effect, and the effect also still present. So that's how it basically begins, the second verse, and then it goes into the chorus. And then after the chorus, we get a lot of heavy guitar chugging and everything, and then the singer comes in, leading it into the solo. The solo is probably the most musical one we've got, so instead of going with the ballistic shred or anything, it's more musical based. It's got a lot more of a melody to it. At the end, then he does pretty much shred the daylights out of it. But before that, it's just a very musical, nice sounding solo. And the song ends on that digital effects as well as the digital voice. That's how the song ends. So it does kind of go back there again. So overall, just extremely interesting song, very interesting, diverse as all hell. So I really do like it. I don't like electronic music, I absolutely hate it. But when they kind of infuse it in with metal and then just kind of use it just to grow the sound, but not just focus on it, I think it's really, really great. So I do really kind of like it. So that's pretty much it for this track. Let's get into the next.
The word has been told, and fates have been sealed. They will be the sand.
So Adrift is 3 minutes 46 seconds, and it starts out again with the kind of electronic thing. So it starts with the electronic thing, you get a bit of a voice there as well with an electronic sound effect on it. I don't think the voice is saying anything, it's just basically just the sound of a voice, and it's digitally affected to all hell and everything, just making it sound really dancey, like it's going to be on a dance album. But then the band come in, and I believe the electronic sounds pretty much disappear, but the band is playing in a sort of way which is actually kind of upbeat and poppy. Although they do have a dark tone to them, a bit of a gothic tone to them, and they are playing quite quickly. It's just, they've kind of infused into all of that a quite pop-ish sound. It's weird because it's gothic and it's metal and it's also pop. is kind of weird when all that's doing that is just the band itself. But they incorporate all of that, I believe, in that intro of theirs. And then the clip I showed you is the first verse. So as it comes out of that, as you heard, it pretty much goes to acoustic or clean guitar, and the drums are going a bit quicker than the rest, but the guitar is doing very nice play, and then the vocals are melodically going over the top of it. And it's got a very intriguing groove to it. It's a very kind of unusual groove, but because of that, it's actually quite interesting. After that, the aggression kind of comes in for the second half of the verse, and the singer gets a bit deeper in his voice. The guitars get really beefy, and they go pretty damn quick. They play quite fast. And then the chorus is that very kind of poppy kind of sound of the verse with the vocals and everything. And then the verse, it's again the same, but that heavy part, the vocalist is very gnarly. He's got a lot of kind of aggression to him, like borderline screams maybe. But it's still kind of thing, it's just really aggressive, his delivery. And the solo in this one is probably the best solo so far, if not in the whole album, because it starts off melodically, it's beautifully melodic and everything, and it's kind of clean, but then it kind of starts building up and it gets faster and faster. Then it gets to a more heavy kind of melodic with holds and things. It's just a very varied solo that has range to it and a good elevation to it also. So it's a very powerful solo, this one. Definitely the best so far. And that is pretty much it. Still a lot of changes in just a 3-minute 46-second song. You wouldn't think you would be able to get much in there. But with how much they cram into this, it feels like one of the 8-minute epics. So getting on to the next track, which is an interesting track. So let's get into it. So with Dark Suns and Dying Stars, the track is 2 minutes 57, so a very short track, but it's not the band. Now this is really weird because a 2 minute 57-second song where it's basically just other instruments and not the band leading into something, you would think would be at the start of the album because it is an intro. Because it starts off soft with keys and then horns and then strings. Then it gets to a bit of a more powerful peak with strong horns and drums and everything. And then it starts calming down leading into the next track. It sounds kind of like an intro. So why is it in the middle of the album? Why all of a sudden we just kind of stop halfway, slow down, have to wait 2 minutes and 57 seconds to get to the next track? Now, I can't be sure without actually having the band tell me, but if I was to have a guess as to why this is, I would think it's basically like a live performance. Now, if you go to see theatre, you would have Act 1 and Act 2. So you would sit down in your chairs, and then as the curtains open, you'll get half a performance, and then they'll take a break. And then you'll then come back for the final act, which will be Act 2. Now, I believe this is probably what they're going for. So we've had our first act of very intense songs with a lot of complexity, a lot to them. So now we're at the halfway mark where us as the audience takes a short break to basically process and relax and then get a nice soothing interlude with a bit of a build-up and then leading us into the next track to get us back hyped and into it. So we get a break, we get excited for the build and the next track coming in, and then we're basically ready for another bombardment of a lot of intense tracks. Now I believe this is the reason. So what do I kind of think of it? It's a nice interlude by all means, but 2 minutes 57 is pretty much 3 whole minutes of waiting and of no real band. So it's probably a tad too long. It doesn't need to be this long. So it could be maybe a bit shorter. You could maybe have included the rest of the band to just give a bit of something more. But it does its job, I must say. I actually don't skip this. I do take this as a break to kind of process and enjoy what I've heard and then get re-psyched up for the second half of the album. So it actually does kind of do that job, at least for me. And I do kind of appreciate the kind of Act 1, Act 2 type of thing because it makes it feel more kind of grander and kind of like professional, like I'm actually hearing a performance type of thing. So I kind of appreciate it. I do kind of like it. Could do with being a bit shorter because it's 3 minute waiting, even though the music does kind of get to a soaring point, it is kind of nice. It is a bit long to kind of have to wait, so if they got it down to around the 2 minute mark, that would be much better. But that's pretty much it for this one, and then this will lead into the next track.
Moving frames the way you know you got a fire in you, generating chaos in you. I'm really deep, that burden you share. I have chosen the way.
So this is the self-titled track, Before the Fall. It is 5 minutes 2 seconds, and it comes straight off of that interlude that we just had prior. So the keys lead us into this track, and then the band immediately come in on pretty much the 2 second mark after the keys are done. And the band pretty much is going at a steady pace. Nothing too fast, nothing too showing offy. It's just going at a steady pace until you get to the verse. Now, the verse and the guitars are kind of doing some quite technical stuff, and the drums are also doing a very quick drum pattern too. And then the voice is also doing a pretty unusual kind of melody style over the music. But guitar-wise and drum-wise and everything, it's going at a pretty quick pace. It's not, shred, it's not Dragon Force type of thing. It's just a quick-paced lead that they're doing. The chorus is, again, kind of Trivium-esque, I kind of feel. It does kind of sound a bit Trivium-y to me. But it's open, you have the lead guitar doing its own kind of lead, and then the voice kind of soars. It's a very strong, very kind of powerful soaring chorus. And then you get back into the verse. Before the second chorus though, you get a bit of a guitar kind of melody that for some reason is there leading into the chorus for the second time. Then after that chorus you get a complete cut off as what they kind of do, and everything goes melodic and you get kind of clean guitars and everything, and then it just is clean for a while. Eventually the singer kind of comes back and it's kind of clean and you get kind of marching drums and everything. Then you get into the solo, again one of the better solos because it's got a great kind of melody to it. It's kind of clean, and then it has a bit of a pause, and then it kind of comes back again and it has its shredded parts, but it's kind of more musical, kind of clean and everything. So it's a bigger solo, fairly open and everything, and it's got its melody and its cleanness, but it's also got that bit of shred to it as well. So the verse, very fast and kind of aggressive. The chorus, very open with some good soars to it. The middle part of the song, you get that slow section, then you get a really strong solo. So that's pretty much it for this track.
I'm chasing dreams, a world of nightmares. I was bound to lose it all. I'm walking along the stream of misery.
Star Driven is again a very short song, just 3 minutes 9 seconds. Now, it's not any kind of interlude or anything, it is the band, so it is probably the shortest song of the band. And this is probably because it kind of misses out an intro, because the song just immediately starts with the vocalist and the entire band, and they're just basically going at it. It starts on the chorus, which is quite fast-paced, but it's got an openness to it. And after that, it leads into the verse, which goes again quite quickly and everything, and it's got a bit of a kind of upbeat to it, but still that gothic kind of vibe again, leading to the chorus. The second verse, though, it's the same, but musically there's less going on. They make it a bit more simple and a bit kind of it's still going at the same speed, they just kind of take things out and make it kind of simple. And then about halfway through you get a guitar lead over the top, but the rest of the band is still following that new tempo and everything that they got going, the new sound. And it doesn't lead back to a chorus, it then kind of leads up to where about the solo is supposed to be, but we don't really get a solo. We do get an interlude kind of thing, a melody from the guitar, but it doesn't do anything. It's just a pattern that's repeated constantly, and then the singer just kind of comes back. So that's kind of not good, because we've got leads and we've had solos, and now all of a sudden we get none. Now, some bands like Alter Bridge miss maybe 3-4 solos out of a whole album. But when you do constant solos, constant leads all over the place, and a lot of showing off, and then all of a sudden there's just no solo, it seriously is going to stick out and be kind of irritating. So Star Driven is kind of nice. It's short, but it's back to that kind of upbeat, more kind of fun vibe like we had with Adrift and everything, instead of the big, open, long songs with a lot of changes. It's just very kind of simple, not many changes, quick paced and everything. A bit more upbeat, but still got that darkness to it. But then you just don't do a solo. You've got the room there for the solo, because you do a stupid interlude, which does kind of nothing. It's a bit of a waste of time, really. And that's kind of weird, seeing that the song is just 3 minutes 9, yet it could be even shorter, because that melody, there's no real point of it. So this track's a bit iffy. It's good, but at the same time it's kind of annoying and kind of bad. And for a short song it could actually be shorter, because that interlude that they put in replacement for the solo, I don't think anyone really appreciates it or would rather have that. I think everyone would rather have a blooming solo. So very weird, don't understand that. But it's upbeat, it's kind of fun. It kind of revitalizes you for the last 2 songs of the album. So it's an okay song, but it's definitely not to the standards of what we've been given.
It was a time of need, of blind ignorance, an endless leap of night time. Fellows of earth and sky.
So the forgery is a bit longer, 4 minutes 3 seconds, so not overly long. And it starts quite anthemic, because there's a bit of an orchestra at the start of the song, feeling like we're going to get a big epic. But when the band actually comes in, it's very heavy. They're doing pinched harmonics and things. And when the singer starts, he starts with a scream. So he's doing screamo. So that is completely new, kind of unexpected. Second track from the end of the album. But he says about 2 kind of words, and then it's mostly singing with just chugging brutal guitars with the pinched harmonics and everything. And then before the chorus he does a fair bit more shouting, so there's a fair bit there, but again it's not really too much. And then the chorus is quite similar to choruses we've pretty much kind of had before, so overall the song's not doing that much pleasing wise, because the screaming I could seriously do without it. It's not, I don't think it gives a nuance to it and a new kind of range. I don't really like it in here. And then the kind of brutal guitars with that kind of pinched harmonics. It's kind of cool and interesting, but it's not that musical, so it's not really grabbing me and engaging with me. So there's that, and the chorus is again quite similar in style to what they've previously done. The solo is quite nice. It's basically just a shreddy solo and it doesn't last too long, but what kind of comes after the solo, I do kind of like that kind of interlude that the guitar does after his solo. It's very interesting. I really like the flow of it. And then it kind of just leads to the chorus. So again, it's not that great of a track. It's all right and it's passable, and there's some good things about it and there's some bad things about it. So hopefully the last track can actually just bring us back to that kind of greatness of what they've kind of given us, as these two tracks have been quite underwhelming.
No hand to hit. There's a house to the right of the grove. In dreams you've seen it already. You know.
The House by the Grove is 5 minutes 42 seconds and is actually a return to form, as it's probably one of the most epics, if not the epic of the album. It starts out with the entire band basically just coming in immediately from the off at a steady pace, and then at around 12 seconds maybe it kind of cuts out and then it goes melodic with just clean guitars and clean vocals, and then halfway through the verse it then gets heavier, and it's heavy, it's kind of brutal, it's going at a pretty quick pace. Then the chorus comes up, which is quite dark, quite gothic, and open. After that chorus, you get the melodic back, but the singer doesn't join in. The melodic part is basically just the lead into the second verse, which just starts out heavy now. And then that goes into the chorus, and then after the chorus, we get a lead up to the solo. The lead up sounds amazing, and then the actual solo is fantastic. It's quite kind of bluesy in areas. There's some really fast speed in other areas, and then it goes back to blues. It's a pretty long solo, this one, mixing between shred and blues and everything and melody. And then it goes kind of to the chorus, and then the chorus starts kind of fading into something else with a bit of a guitar lead underneath the chorus. And then it goes into a guitar kind of lead melody, which sounds really nice, and that is pretty much how the song ends. So we got a lot of changes, some guitar melody leads here and there, which sound fantastic, a really great chorus. So it's a really good track to end on. The House by the Grove definitely is a return to form of just sheer brilliance and great musicianship. So that is pretty much it for the album. So overall about this album, there is so many changes. Each track has a unique, different sound to it, and within the one track it changes so dramatically and so much that one short track of around 3 minutes could have multiple versions of a verse, a chorus, and then different interludes and intros out of place and put somewhere else. And the songs are just all over the place, so many different styles to them. Some songs, they span genres, like Adrift, and the track prior to that one, I forgot the name of it now, with the electronic sound to an electronic genre, then back to metal and everything. just crossing all that. They had the kind of screamo genre, which again I didn't really appreciate, but it just kind of shows the amount of range of genres they do, the amount of different styles and techniques and pacing they do within just a one track, and then each track is still different. And then if you listen to the previous album, it doesn't have the gothic kind of open vibe to it, but each track is again still vastly different to anything on this. It's pretty intense, and because of that it's great, and we have some really good strong solos at times and some great leads throughout, some amazing vocal work and everything with great melodies and things and speed. But I was saying there's so much on offer, so much musicianship in the album. It makes it very hard for a listener, because I've listened to this album multiple times and it's really hard to actually remember the songs, because there is so much in the song, there's so much going on, and then you're focusing so much on the next track because there's so much changes and you're trying to remember everything that you've gone and forgotten the previous track that you've just listened to. It is so hard to remember because it's not just one song of, okay, that's what the verse sounds like and this is what the chorus sounds like. It's no, the first part of the verse sounds like this, and then the second part of the verse sounds like this, and the third part of the verse sounds like this, and then the second time round for the second verse, it then starts like this, and then it goes to this, and then it goes to this. And then after the chorus, there's a change to this, and then maybe the chorus has a different kind of change, and then the intro is took from there and then put there, and you've got all of that to remember in one song. And there's 10 tracks, and they do it in near enough every track like this, which makes it insanely tricky to remember. Now, this is kind of bad because for newcomers who listen to the album, they just may say, it's not memorable, there's nothing memorable about it, therefore they'll write it off. But then you can think about it in a different aspect, like each time you listen to it, it's like, oh, I remember that, and it will be like a first listen, but you will kind of also recognise it. So it doesn't get boring, it doesn't get stale, like simple bands that are actually catchy and easily rememberable. Because of that, you remember it so well that there's nothing new to it, nothing good to remember. So you get bored of it quicker. This album, I won't get bored of quick because every time is kind of like a new listen for me. But again, saying that, once I'm finished, I can't actually remember anything. Just like I haven't even heard it, which is disappointing because I wanted to remember all the great melodies and the great leads and everything. With time, I'm sure I will eventually come to remember it, but it'll take a lot of listens. It's a hard listen. It's enjoyable, but it's hard to remember. And there was them 2 tracks, The Forgery, and track before that, what was that? What was it? Star Driven. Star Driven being quite kind of basic, Forgery being a bit too screamy for me. So if I were to put a score on this, it's definitely above average, like the musicianship and the amount of changes, it's definitely above that. It's above a 7, which is what I would say is good. 8 would be really good, and it is really good, so it would be 8. But how much into 8? Well, it's definitely better than some other very good bands, so 8.5. Would it be 9 for absolutely great and 10 masterpiece? Well, no, because as I said, there's them 2 tracks which weren't that good. They were fine and everything, they are good, they're just not like the rest of the album. It's hard to remember, it's difficult to get into, but every time is like a new listen, so there is 2 sides of that. And some of the tracks, there's a lot of skill and everything, and a lot of slowdown and everything to appreciate the flow of the music and then how versatile they are. But because of it, it's not extremely catchy, upbeat and fun. So it doesn't kind of have that going for it. So there is that. You don't listen to this for fun, you listen to this as an appreciation for great kind of musicianship. It's not something you kind of want to listen to at a party and really enjoy in the background. This album does not suit that in the slightest. At all. So there's that too. So it's not amazing fun and really, really catchy. but it's not boring. It's got a lot of technicality to it, so much on offer. Every time is like new, but it is also hard to get into. So it's a bit tricky. So it's not a 10, and it's not a 9. So it would be somewhere around the 8s. Now I gave Defecto Nemesis an 8.5 because 2 of them melodic tracks didn't do much and they didn't have solos, and the songs could be a bit longer in length. Now this band would probably be an 8.5 like Defecto, but for other reasons. They had 2 tracks that were not that much of a standout. This album is not as fun as Defecto, but again, this album has a lot more going on than Defecto's Nemesis. So I would probably give it an 8.5. It's a very good album and kind of great as well, but it does kind of have its flaws. So I'd say 8.5. So thank you for sticking with me for this review. I hope I didn't bore you. I hope I did give you some enjoyment out of this and some good insight. I hope you liked it and everything. And I'll see you on the next one.